As fires burn out from yesterday, a wandering mare's found a better way. For just as night seems most dark, the sunrise comes to warm our hearts.
From the ashes of war, through the blood and the gore, a man once more than this world that is torn. A group that cannot just be stopped or forgot will rise to overcome all odds. And with every new day, through the parts that we play, as we push fear away and remember the ways of a man who was kind and whose words will remind. Do better.
Chapter 3. Breaking Many Cherries. If you ever find yourself in over your head, just remember, one task at a time and you can get through it. John Still Drivin' Henry. I wasn't the only one struggling to move hoof over hoof up the dirt-covered concrete stairs. Our party was hastily bandaging tender wounds, or, in my case, tiny, less than fully developed muscles struggling to haul myself, my pack, and my weapons up the climb.
Why did the equipment that had my name on them have to be so darn heavy? Had my muscles atrophied in stasis?
By the time I managed to finally pull myself over the top, my hooves ached with the bite of the stairs that were crudely improvised and far too steep for comfort. Flopping down to take a long, hard nap was such a tempting idea. The best one I've had since my invention of the deep-fried sweet onion rings and roasted potato tackle. Sadly, my newfound friends didn't seem willing to indulge in my brilliant nap idea.
Well, when you can't beat them or convince them, you just have to join them, right?
We trotted beyond the entrance out into the slate quarry. I wasn't sure if what was behind us was a cave or a bunker, judging from the construction equipment around us.
Really? Could they have at least swept up their front porch and made it look a bit nicer than just a hole in the ground? While they're at it, they should have set out tea and scones for us too.
Despite the day being extremely cloudy, I couldn't help but feel my spirit lift as Celeste's blessing washed over me. It had been a long time since I'd been outside again. Even if I could barely feel the sunlight on us, it was welcome to have sky over our heads.
If these creatures and my pitbuck are to be believed, it's been 182 years since the last time I felt Celestia's warmth. Just how much time have I been kept occupied inside the Stable 43's stasis pod? Was it even possible for some pony to stay that long in a stasis tank? Perhaps even centuries? The stable tech personnel were also using them while they slept. This is life now.
I couldn't linger on my thoughts any longer, as I was snapped back to reality by Alguacil's voice.
It seems clear up here. Nothing but rusted out machines, a few trailers, and rocks. We're in some pit mine.
I ignored Alguacil for a moment, and instead looked around. I took a seat to let my muscles rest for a moment and rubbed my pitbug leg to stop a building cramp. Anything was better than worrying about how much time had passed, or marching out to go look for another fight with these creatures I wanted to call friends. I needed to get my mind off the date on my pitbox somehow. Everywhere I looked stood plain, uninspiring hills of slate and gray stone. It was like staring at a blank piece of paper while a nightmare's shadow loomed behind you. The hard rock face behind us held the cave we came out of. Eventually, I turned around to look at the hole we emerged from and realized the exit doors were improvised steel from the machinery in the quarry. The doors looked like the two of them had been taken from a passenger carriage spellmatrix hood. That, or a piece of construction equipment salvage. I only managed to recognize them because, well, I'd seen them before. It gave me pause as I cocked my head to the side.
Why would some Honi use carriage parts for a door? There were far better uses for the spellmatrix hood than that. Great. Dad is rubbing off on me harder than I thought.
I slowly looked away from the cave and spotted a makeshift guard tower right next to us. Beyond that was a row of intact trailers with StableTech decals on them. All of them colored in that obnoxious blue and yellow StableTech loved so much. All of that, however, paled in comparison when I spotted two massive mechanical earth movers. One was a massive bucket crane, and the other was an even larger lift crane with a heavy stable door attached to its platform.
This is an incomplete stable. No wonder I recognized the interior. We must have woken up in what was either going to be the water filtration room or the chamber for rain collection.
The two construction pieces had obviously been left exposed to the elements for ages, as they were both covered in brown and black rust. Their caterpillar road wheels were mostly there but turned from shining chrome to dull, unsightly rust. From this distance, I could see one of the wires holding the stable door looked frayed. Despite all that, they were in good shape beneath all the layers of rust and neglect. The hole behind us was meant to be reinforced and made into something to withstand megaspells. Now, it was just a set of rusty metal doors improvised from scraps. There was a guard tower built from scrap metal, a ladder torn off of the machinery, and a crane bucket at the top for someone to stand watching. Cascades of rock and slates dotted the immediate area, along with what looked like a well-worn path made from hoof tracks. I let out an eep of surprise, jumping forward when I felt a cardboard edge bunt against my rear. I spun around, ready to shout and scream in painful anger as I could feel the throbbing sharp pain of a shallow cardboard cut along my flank below my cutie mark.
When and how did I get that cutie mark again?
Corners was sitting there, two sheepish eyes gazing at me from the slit of her box.
Don't knock on doors, you're gonna get us all killed.
She snarled out from her box. I looked at the filly, very surprised and hurt.
Just for that, I'm knocking on every door before we go in.
We should demolish this tower. If it belongs to those other raiders, it'll at least keep them from using it.
Alguacil suggested, causing me to look at him with a confused expression.
Were we really going to break their stuff? I mean, they had tried to kill us, apparently. Wait, they had tried to kill us! Why do I feel awful about breaking their things? Hold on, Alguacil. There may be something useful up there. Let me go look.
I tried to hide how scared I was when I spoke. My words quivered heavily, and I'm pretty sure I failed. I didn't want to hurt some pony if we could avoid it, and I hoped he wouldn't realize I was lying.
That's a good idea, darling. Go on up there and check it first.
But he gave my flank a pat exactly where Corners had left the paper cut.
Ow! Come on. Can I get a break today? I've already seen... Nope. Not thinking about it. Not going to deal with that right now.
Just then, something inside my visor had moved past my left eye.
Hey, wait a minute. Well, this is embarrassing. I guess all the commotion earlier had me forget that I'd been wearing it this whole time.
I started up the ladder rungs and took off my helmet. The side of it had StableTech's logo, and the word security was below that in a bold, white text. There was a clip on the back of the helmet, which made it easy to hook it to my pack while I resumed climbing. Whatever had moved wasn't there on the visor, and wasn't out beyond in the quarry.
Forget about it for now, and just get a move on.
I climbed the ladder to the top of the tower. Then I got an idea in case there were some pony waiting to ambush me. My tail tossed the helmet up to the guard basket while I continued to stare up at it at the top of the ladder rungs. There was a heavy thump on the wood, and I listened intently just under the rim of the platform. Nothing.
I guess it's safe. That or they aren't just going to randomly shoot at a helmet or the first thing that appears at the top of the ladder.
Carefully, I pulled my hoofs over the edge and hoisted myself up to the platform. Up here, I could see around the quarry much better. There were a few nice things inside the tower basket too. The tower was, thankfully, empty of any pony. Instead, there, next to my helmet, laid a scooped rifle, a blood-stained mattress.
Wow, whoever slept here had some bad chimichangas.
A green ammo box, and a thermos. I picked up my helmet and looked at it closer. Spring Bronco's blood and brain on it made me cringe. I tried to wipe it away with a hoof, but all that did was smear the blood and left a red-caked film.
I have to clean this off. This wasn't my fault. He hadn't been killed by me. He made his choices. I offered him a second chance. Were all griffins just murderers? Who tried to kill them in return? And now I was caught in the crossfire? How can I function like this?
The emotion welled up inside, and I couldn't fight them down. I felt a combination of terror and an obsession to be clean. I didn't even realize all the grit I was covered in. Not until my helmet was clean. Not until Spring Bronco's last remains weren't smeared over my headpiece. When the helmet's ballistic visor was finally clear again, my heart slowed and the emotions ebbed away. Bronco's body gore was still splattered across my stable suit.
At least I didn't have to look at a reminder of Spring Bronco's final moments.
In the bright sunlight,
well, bright to me and brighter than that half-finished stable,
I could see the modifications to my stable barding reflecting in the visor. I still looked like the wandering sunrise I knew. There was a vault number on my collar, 43. 2 fitted shoulder pads with metal plates, along with knee pads, and several pieces of additional reinforcement along my flanks as well. My face, however, was where my attention was truly drawn. I could see the hurt in my eyes, and the feeling of despair creeping into my mind. In the last few hours, I had been forced to come to terms with mole rats the size of my body, ponies murdering other ponies, and extremely angry robots trying to kill the only friends I had.
Were they even my friends? Or had we just banded together because survival had been more important at that moment?
I put the helmet back on and fastened the chin strap.
At least behind the visor, they can't see the hurt in my eyes. Only the childlike wonder that a filly should have. Right?
I pulled the visor down and started to move again. I looked out the tower. Propping my forelegs on its plank railing, I was above the lip of the construction site inside here. I could see out beyond the slate and gravel. This was a land left with a combination of blasted bits and craters still embedded in the soil. The mountains in the distance looked like a blasted hellscape of painful sword jutting from the earth, instead of a snow-capped sleeping giant. At least I could see the path out of here made for the heavy cranes.
Anywhere had to be better than here, right? I mean, not everyone could be like this.
I shivered at the thought of Spring's death. The way he looked so much at peace with his decision.
No, I'm sure there are plenty of nice ponies. We just have to find them.
It had to be that simple. Ponies were better than this. Even still, I couldn't help but stare at the rifle. I recalled the shotgun resting against my backpack and the sheer number of weapons my new friends carried. Every pony seemed ready to kill at the drop of a hat. Still, I had to salvage everything that we could. Buddy kept saying so, and they had even talked about eating meat.
Regardless of how you feel, Sunrise, the sand dog has been a friend so far, and you owe him for shielding you from that blast.
I felt a smile creep onto my face. I realized he really was a friend. My smile fell away when I felt a shift in the weight on my back. My tail had picked up the rifle on its own.
How are you doing that? Never mind. I think if I ask less questions about how and only what and when, then it won't break my mind. What's in this?
I thought out loud to my tail and put my pip-buck up to the thermos. I had no idea that the robot down in the tunnel had given a few clicks from the pip-buck's rad counter. I wasn't about to let radiation kill me. Radiation had been the whole reason we had gone into Stable 43 in the first place. There wasn't any ticking, so I opened it and gave it a cautious sniff. Ginseng tea. It smelled lovely. Surprisingly, it was still warm too. I took a swig of it and recognized that it at least tasted good.
Ha! You're all wrong. I don't have to eat meat. I can still find plenty of veggies. At least if my luck holds out.
I stopped and greedily sucked down the rest of the thermos as my stomach got heavy from the tea. Sadly, there was a growl from it.
Oh, come on. I don't have anything more solid right now. Can't you be happy with what I give you, Tummy?
I ignored the grumbling from my inside and flipped open the ammo box. A collection of 308 rifle rounds were inside, a hefty caliber for me. Once one of the bullets was in my hoof, my tail knew to bring the rifle to me. I pulled the bolt back and it fit.
Good enough. Let's get down and regroup before they start to worry.
I climbed down the ladder and saw 4 sets of eyes from 5 different creatures, all looking at me quite worried.
Took long enough. What did you find?
Alguacil asked suspiciously. I quickly took out the rifle and the thermos into my hoofs.
That rifle is a lucky discovery. Let's hope you can use it properly.
Chifondo pointed a hoof at the scope mounted on the top of the gun. I stared back at him, aghast.
They expected danger? Was what happened in the half-built stable not an isolated incident?
Buddy walked over to the tower and started shoving the base of the tower. He pushed hard enough for the wood to groan under the sand-dog's assault. Alguacil dodged a rope around another support beam. He flew away, moving rather gracefully for a creature his size. The boards finally could take no more, and the structure split along the 4 corner logs, holding it up. Finally, with one last great heave, the entire tower tumbled over and crashed to the ground. I raised my hoof to cover my mouth as the resulting dust rolled and the ground shook with the force of the impact. Neora let out a coughing fit and Alguacil flapped his wings, flying above the debris. Corners just slit the lid in our box.
There. Stupid raider ponies won't be able to use that anymore.
Buddy puffed out his chest, all proud of himself. I surveyed the devastation our sand dog had caused.
Don't make the sand dog mad. He can smash you.
The guard tower had been turned into wooden scraps that you wouldn't recognize as anything other than just random discolored planks and sundered lumber.
Well, if nothing knew we were here, it knows we are now.
Alguacil adjusted his sombrero and shifted his eye over to the largest lift crane.
I'll go up there and get a good look around.
He extended his wings and gave them a hard flap, bringing him to the top of the crane. He was barely in shouting range up there, but at least the griffin seemed determined to keep an eye out for us rather than fly off.
At least he's staying and not proving a total mercenary.
I looked up at the big earth mover, and my eyes went wide in wonder. The large bucket crane was like an ancient creature that this quarry had worn away, but it refused to bow down. It was like standing proud, like an alicorn princess in Canterlot. I trotted off towards it to get a better look.
Hey, buddy.
Nyota piped up.
You Corners and Chifundo go check the trailers. I'm going to see if we can scavenge anything from the bucket crane.
I took a glance over my shoulder, and Nyota was following me, catching up quickly. His full-sized stallion hooves were able to take much bigger steps than me, and I only heard him now that we were away from the group.
Wow, for a full-grown zebra, he sure is light on his feet. You don't think that... No. Sunrise, calm down. Dad said not all zebras were bad. And he also emphasized that I shouldn't judge any pony until they prove themselves, one way or the other. Nyota hasn't given you a reason to be afraid of him. And he did fix up Corner's leg, twice now. I'm sure he doesn't mean you any harm or anything. I'm sure the Ministry of Morale slogans were wrong, right? I mean, they couldn't possibly all be right. Not all zebras were bad. Many lived in Equestria when the bombs fell.
An image sprang to my mind. One of Ministry Mayor Pinkie Pie looking down at me.
Stripes! You should have gripes!
All around her were zebras with various vicious-looking implements. I shuddered at the thought.
Little one, something wrong?
Nyota asked as the sound of his walking stopped. I didn't look at him. I couldn't let him see the conflict on my face.
No, it's fine. Let's see if this thing works. Just keep focused on the work. Make yourself useful, and make sure you aren't being too much of a bother. These ponies are still strangers to you, Sunrise.
On one hoof, I had my dad talking to me, telling me to give every pony, zebra, griffin, and sanddog a chance.
Dragons, too?
On the other, I had my mother, screaming to me to be careful and not to trust them. I could hear both their voices clearly.
Oh boy, Sunrise! When you find your parents, you three are gonna need a super-duper serious heart-to-heart. A shrink is gonna make so many caps cleaning up that little mess.
These thoughts were carried with me all the way up to the operator cabin, and I had to jump the last bit of the ramp since it was missing. Working to pull myself on the top of the machine to get around to the engine compartment was a task. Nyota nudged my flank the rest of the way up, and I stifled a yelp when he did. With how surprising it was to have his breath back there, Nyota ignored the yelp and stayed down there on the landing outside the operator's nest. I looked over to see him using his eye to keep watch around us.
Go on, Sonny.
I winced at being called that. For some reason, it felt demeaning.
I'll make sure the coast is clear.
I looked over the lip edge of the engine deck.
Don't call me Sonny.
Nyota shot a glare at me with his one uncovered eye.
Please.
I added, with a hint of remorse in my tone. He snorted at me and motioned behind me as if to say, get to work. I had to use the rope inside my pack to hook around the hatch handle.
Note to self, set time aside to see what else is in this pack.
It was awkward pulling on it, and lifting the heavy steel plate engine cover took all the strength my muscle could manage. Finally, the rusted shut compartment gave and ground against its hinges with a shriek of metal on metal. It hung there, half open, when I stopped pulling. The rust would not let gravity win this time. Slowly, I peeked in and expected a mess. 15 months, one day, 14 hours until Mega Spell Day.
Sunrise. Dear, get that number 6 wrench for me.
There was no hiding the stress or fatigue of the stallion that called out to me. We were back in the mechanic shop with my father, working on a Pegasus passenger carrier, a Sky Tourist Mark III. It was one of the first publicly available models, and this one was owned by the city of Stalliongrad. They hadn't bothered to upgrade the fleet to the newest Mark 7s. You know, why fix what isn't broken, right? Except this one was. I trotted over and picked up the wrench under the black bold number 6 from the fire engine red toolbox. I placed it onto his hoof with my mouth and let out a giggle as I crawled underneath.
Dad, you know I have almost no talent for this mechanic stuff. Why do you and Mom always bring me to work during the summer?
I asked as I got under the carrier with him. I was still pretty small, and unlike him, it wasn't cramped for me. I was careful not to hit any of the levers or controls for the hydraulic lift, holding up the malfunctioning machine.
There's always a chance, my little wanderer. I mean, you've gone this long without your mark. I suspect we'll find that thing you're really good at soon enough.
His wings held apart in place before his mouth took the wrench from his hoof and gave it a good twist. I got up on my stepladder and used my hoofs to help hold the new capacitor in place. He chuckled through the wrench and let his other hoof hold the wrench in place for a second.
Oh, come on, little wanderer. It can't be all that bad, can it?
He gave me his usual dad smile.
You look like a sad sunrise to me about right now.
Great. Dad jokes. Just what I needed.
I wasn't a tiny filly anymore, but I wasn't a full-grown mare either. Just hadn't earned my cutie mark yet, that's all. You know, that one thing that is supposed to help determine what you're really good at? Well, I was the oldest pony at school not to have it. I should be happy to be at work with that instead of school. Here, I wasn't the center of every bully's attention to pummel or make fun of. The adults didn't pick on me about not having a mark yet. Instead, they simply viewed it as unrealized potential. Maybe I just dwelled on not being picked on for it, but I wish I had my mark already, so this could be a done deal. At least then, the bullies would pick another target.
Dad, really? Have you ever even seen a sad sunrise?
I asked as he finished with the part.
Well, I can only say I only ever seen one. I think you were still too little to really remember it.
The stallion wiggled from underneath the carriage and dusted himself off with his hooves. This attempt to clean did nothing other than smear his coat in grease. His wings flapped and put a bit of black smear onto my white coat. I didn't flinch, just looked back and grimaced in frustration.
Come on, Sunrise. Let's get lunch. This one's done.
He walked towards the front of the shop where his office was. I looked around at the other mechanic ponies and even a pair of mechanic zebras working inside that shop. My mom had always been very concerned about Pearlif and Netherbloom. They were always a source of contention in our household. I smiled at them. They smiled back. We still did this even though we could clearly see the image of Pinkie Pie in the background. Looking at all of us, those big blue eyes were horrifying to behold. Pinkie Pie's eyes would always meet your gaze and follow you around the room. Every one of us could feel being watched around those posters. This one showed Pinkie Pie glaring at us while her 2 forehooves were putting a zebra firmly into the dirt. The words,
"Beware! Beware! Beware!"
etched over the top and bottom. The zebra certainly looked in pain. Just beyond the mare zebra's mouth on the ground was a rolled-up scroll with the word secret written over it.
Dad,
The sound of the office door closing shot any chance I had to talk. Dad was already inside, ringing up the city official for the work that we had just finished. I wasn't supposed to be up front. It was for insurance reasons, but right now, I had to talk to him. That poster disturbed me that much. He took the coin bits from the city rep, while someone else in the shop got the Mark III ready to be lashed and driven outside.
Rainbow Rise,
I said as I walked up to him. He turned to me with a concerned face. He had heard his name in his daughter's voice, and any time I called my parents by their name, they immediately knew something was wrong.
Yes, my sunrise?
His deep, gentle voice soothed my apprehension a bit. The city rep walked out to collect the carriage, paying us no mind. It was written on my face that I was bothered, upset, and possibly even angry.
Dad, can we take down that Ministry of Morale poster?
I couldn't look up at him when I spoke. I felt my cheek burning with embarrassment, knowing a customer could walk in and see us at any moment.
Please don't be mad. You and Mom fight over this so much.
No, hun. We have to keep it up per the Ministry Mayor's rules. Does it really bother you that much? I mean, I'm not allowed to take it down, but I guess I can move it.
I felt his hoof press against my chin and lift my face to meet his. He wasn't angry or upset. He was looking at me with love and concern.
No, it's just...
The hesitation only made my body tense up more. I had to get the thought out now, or I would explode in a puff of white fluff.
I know it bothers Perilith and Netherbloom.
The words were mumbling out of my mouth, but because he was holding my head up, I could be heard clearly.
That mare and stallion have to put up with so much else outside of work. Can't we make it any better for them?
I whimpered out, not sure if he would pet me on the head or if Mom would walk in and slap me. I got neither. Much to my surprise, instead, I felt 2 hoofs on my shoulders and 2 wings firmly around me. I felt safe as I realized my dad had pulled me into a hug. He pulled me protectively close, my face pressed into his strong stallion mechanic chest, smearing more grease onto my white coat.
You're such a daddy's filly, aren't you? I'll go talk to those 2 and see if they can think of somewhere I can put it. Or they don't have to look at it. Then I guess I'll speak to your mother about it tonight and make sure we can manage to get away with moving the posters to some corner out of sight, I guess. Does that sound fair, little wanderer?
I looked up at him with big filly eyes, staring into his warm, loving ones. I only nodded and smiled, quite relieved and grateful. I carried the smile over my shoulders, and at the 2 zebra mechanics who tilted their head at me, confused. All they could do was smile back. It felt good to be nice to some ponies I barely knew.
Never let others tell you what you have to accept. Always give every pony a chance. If that's all you ever learn from me, keep that.
He whispered in my ear. Rainbow Rise gave me a nuzzle against the ear and let me go. He trotted back into the workshop.
Go on and wash up. I'll be back shortly to eat lunch with you. I believe your mother said she packed some berry fritters in there.
Before I went off to wash up, I watched him going to talk to Perilith and Netherbloom. For a second they looked shocked. Then they turned in unison and smiled at me. I cranked the wrench one more time, then inspected the wiring. My cleanest hoof wiped a tear from my cheek as the memory faded away.
Yeah, that isn't supposed to go there.
I thought out loud before starting the rewiring. It was tedious work, but it had allowed me to recall the last time I had worked alongside zebras. Neora's eye patch was above the rim of the engine deck, and I thought his head was following me, almost like an eye was still there. Both zebra sets, past and present, had been quiet, but nothing terribly creepy or off-putting about it. I was making a decision right now. I would follow Dad's example, judge every pony for myself, and give them a chance. even if my friends were determined that some pony was guilty up front. I would keep this policy as best I could.
Nyota, do you see a battery anywhere nearby?
I hollered over the engine deck to the zebra stallion. I moved to the edge of the crane and looked down over the operator's cabin to get my eyes on him.
I'm surprised the glass for this thing is still intact.
I do not see one, nor do I know what they would look like.
Nyota gazed back with a neutral expression. Every time I blinked, his expression didn't change, but something else was there too.
Hard to read much. Could you give me something? Please? It would be nice if I could at least get an idea of how you felt right now.
I smiled at him nervously after a long, awkward stare.
Right. Zebra tech's different from pony tech. Let's go check with the others. As far as I can tell, this thing should start now, assuming...
I trailed off and had to focus on climbing down, putting my hoofs onto his back to make it easier.
I did my job correctly.
I finished as my first rear hoof touched creaking, rusted yellow metal. Nyota, for his part, didn't move away, but instead stood his ground to help me down. I detected the faintest hint of a smile on his face.
You smiled! I saw it! You aren't all tough! Oh, come on! Don't frown extra hard now to hide it!
Finally, I got down onto the platform, barely able to fit next to Nyota. I wasn't full-sized yet, so there was just enough room for the two of us to squeeze onto the ramp landing.
Thank you, Nyota. I'm sorry that some of the buckshot hit you earlier. I thought you were...
A hoof hit my lips, and he shook his head, but there was a smile again.
The slightest, smallest smile I've ever seen! But damn it, you smiled! Wait, did I just think, damn it? Sheesh. Mom would wash my mind out with soap.
I turned and opened the cabin. Surprisingly, on closer examination, the glass around it was completely intact like I thought. No cracks or anything. The steel frame held the windows that gave the pilot a panoramic view in place. The controls inside was just as well preserved, if somewhat dusty. I looked and counted, checking to make sure that all the paddles moved. The clutch took some effort, but I could feel it depress, and the brakes sounded with a grinding noise. We didn't roll as I played with the gear shift to make sure every gear locked in place, especially the 3 reverse ones. Even the panel wasn't missing buttons, and the spring had not popped out beyond their normal console slots.
I will never understand how some pony built something this sturdy. But hey, if it still works, it still works.
I popped the glove box and grimaced in confusion at what I found.
Why are there gloves in a glove box? I swear I've never found gloves in a glove box.
Under the leather hoof gloves I found, the vehicle's instruction manual.
My lucky day!
I grabbed the manual and poured through it, losing track of time as I tried to commit it all to memory. All the details on the operation of this vehicle were here. Every control and lever. This was wonderful. If I had done the repairs right, and the engine cylinder were all still sealed by their gaskets, she would be able to start up, and I was reasonably sure I could drive her. Once I had finished, I closed the manual and sighed.
Right. A battery. Let's go find out what's going on with Buddy, Corners, and Chifundo.
As I set the book down, Nyota knocked against the glass, and I turned my head. He motioned his head towards the trailers where Buddy and Corners had re-emerged. I got out and followed Nyota's fresh tracks in the dirt towards the 3 trailers.
A battery? Could a spark battery of that size last that long? Would the magic charge inside hold despite weather and wear?
I was so lost in thought, I nearly walked into something. My heart skipped a beat as there was a battery attached to the end of the trailer where Buddy was standing.
That would work perfectly!
I plugged in the test tool from my pip-buck and it returned a charge at 78%, according to the readout from the maintenance program.
Now, how do I move something nearly as big as me up to the top of that bucket crane and get it inside the battery holder?
I turned to Buddy and looked at his bulky biceps.
Hey, I need a battery for the Earth Mover. Can we take this one?
I blurted out in my excitement. Buddy scratched under his cow pony hat and looked down sheepishly. First time I've ever seen a sand dog look completely confused.
You want her battery?
Her? Who was her? Was someone living in this trailer?
Buddy kicked the dirt and straightened out his hat as he regained his composure.
Listen, little lady. We made that ghoul pony rather upset. And
In my confused mind, the word ghoul stuck out to me, and I tried to figure out what in Equestria a ghoul could possibly be. Only to realize I had wondered out loud, interrupting Buddy. Corner snickered and smiled under her box.
Why don't we let her talk to that mare and find out for herself?
Bugs Pone couldn't manage the sentence without belting out several giggles. I looked at Corner skeptically before turning my head to Buddy. He shrugged at me and motioned with both hands towards the door that led inside. The blue trailer appeared mostly intact. I couldn't see through the windows due to the dirt and grime. The tires were all flat, so the rusted Stapletech trailer was most certainly not rolling anywhere. I walked up to the door that looked like it was barely on its hinges and tapped my hoof against it 3 times. A few heavy hoof falls on the floor inside. Later, and an irritated voice called out.
What do you want now? Can't a pony get...
The door opened, and the raspy, irritated and harsh mare's voice came to a halt as the two of us looked at each other with stark realizations. I was looking at a unicorn, only this one looked like a shriveled, rotten prune. Her flesh had partially rotten away, and the unicorn's nose was almost completely missing. Her eye sockets were hollowed out and drawn back as though extremely dehydrated. My eyes went wide in shock as I took the sight in. In front of me had to be a corpse. A moving, walking, talking corpse.
How was this possible? What in Celestia was this creature? Why would any pony do this to another pony? How could a pony survive this?
She looked like she was going to drop over dead any second now, while questions raced through me, faster than I could think of answers. She stuttered in a raspy, harsh tone, probably from the damage to her vocal cords.
I'm sorry. I didn't realize. I promised the Philly Scouts I'd pay for cookies soon.
She was clearly afraid of me as she rasped to speak. I looked down to make sure I wasn't covered in the same aberrations I saw on her skin.
Her skin? She didn't have a coat of fur. That was the skin that was supposed to be underneath a coat.
I hesitated before I spoke and pointed to the yellow number 43 on my Stapletech barding to emphasize the barding.
I'm not a Philly Scout. I'm not here to collect for cookies.
I nervously smiled at her, hoping this creature wasn't about to eat me. There was an audible sigh of relief, and she pressed her hoof to her chest, like she was trying to calm a fast-beating heart.
Oh, good. Fitments are good and all, but not worth dying for.
My jaw visibly dropped as I heard my voice inside me get really high-pitched in response.
They kill ponies over cookies?
Oh, post-war, mega spells. The Philly Scouts collection efforts got really aggressive.
She noticed the impression this had left on me.
Right. Stable dweller. Well, at least you're cute. Though your cutie mark had me going for a minute. What can I help you with?
Will ponies stop reminding me of my cutie mark? That had more questions to it than answers. Things like, when did that happen? How did that happen?
Play it cool and look at your own flank in a minute when no one else is looking.
The pink pony in my head finished my thoughts for me.
I need to stop staring. That is very rude. Have questions to ask about the spark battery.
My thoughts raced, and I bordered on freaking out, only to calm myself with a deep breath, just enough to continue speaking.
I was wondering if you would be willing to trade something for the battery attached to your trailer. It looks like it will fit the earth mover over there, and I just finished fixing her up.
The ghoul mare's jaw dropped hard. It unhinged, going far enough down that it was past her collarbone in a freakish display. I could see into her throat, and there was even a hole that let light in halfway down. The long sins dried out, and cracked skin glowed a disturbing neon green in a few places. I gave her a nervous,
"Pretty please?"
type of smile, in the hope of bringing her back to the moment with filly cuteness.
You want my battery? For the old earth mover? How do you know how to fix it?
She asked, trying to collect her composure.
Well, that wasn't about to happen. Yeah, my dad showed me a lot of how to fix Matrix tech stuff at his shop before the bombs fell.
I stated that fact like it was common knowledge. I looked up at the mare, maintaining the cutest smile I could muster.
By the way, what's your name? I'm Wandering Sunrise.
You were alive? Before I...
She took a minute and looked at her stable tech uniform. It read Construction Employee 110-774-C. She pulled the tag off and tossed it back into the trailer.
Frito waffles. And if you're willing to get my neighbors to be quieter, then yeah, I'd be happy to trade my battery to you. It would be kind of interesting to see that thing move again.
I tilted my head to the side in confusion.
That was it? A battery like that must either be common, or her neighbors were really loud and rowdy. That's it? Sure, we can talk to them and have a conversation to take care of that for you.
I gave Waffles a blush at her sheepish grin.
Why does this feel like an R-rated Nightmare Night movie suddenly?
Waffles smiled and nodded, then wordlessly closed the door. I swore I heard a laugh from the other side. I looked away, and my eyes fell on my cutie mark once more.
Just when did I get that? Wait, a better question is why? Why would I get a cutie mark that was a steel ranger exploding from the inside out? I guess the answer must lie in that week's worth of missing memories.
I looked down at my pip-book to see the status screen. I scrolled through, checking to see if there was anything else going on with me I should be aware of. Something was blinking in the data section of the screen. I scrolled to it and found encrypted files. At least a dozen of them. Weirdly enough, I couldn't even read the file names. There was, however, one clue to them though. All of them were dated for the last 7 days on my Pip-Book calendar. That was the first clue as to how we had gotten here or what had happened in the last week. My memory held glimpses of a few events, getting out of the stasis pod and checking the dates on my Pip-Book, before looking up at the stallion in a lab coat, a stallion who was being attacked and shooting at something. Everything about him was a shadow. I couldn't clearly see his colors or his face, just a vague shape. The next thing I remember was suddenly waking up in that pool with the others. These files told me that there was something in them from the week between. I had to know.
Sunrise, it has to wait. Wait until we get somewhere safe before you start picking at those files.
It would have to wait. What we were in for right now had to be resolved. I walked over to Buddy and looked up at him, smiling still. I had some direction for once. He spared me only a quick glance, then turned back to corners, the box pone busy talking away at him.
I don't know if she knows that. Besides, she's younger than me.
Corner said as I trotted up and the conversation stopped.
Great. They'd been talking about me.
I smiled at the two of them and pointed at the next trailer.
All right. We will have to make her neighbors in the other trailer calm down and be less rowdy.
I explained as Buddy walked over and put a paw onto the next door trailer. The trailer vibrated with a growl.
Wait, was the trailer growling? No, Sunrise. Something inside is growling.
The growl was low and made my legs tremble. Whatever that was, it had to be big, scary, and angry. Buddy took his paw off the trailer and cautiously backed away. I looked around the trailer, hoping I would find an electric box on one of its walls. I didn't find one, but I did see a flickering light inside through a window, so something had to be feeding it power.
Wait, if there's a battery, is it still running?
I pressed an ear up against the side of the trailer and heard the sound of a hum from a generator.
Yes, it's running.
I took a hop of glee. A growl quickly drained all hope from me as it echoed again when I clopped my hoofs.
It sounds angry,
Was all Buddy managed to say, obviously referring to the growling from inside earlier. He motioned to Nyora to follow him before I pointed a hoof at Alguacil, who was still keeping watch out for us.
I'm not loud enough. Can you call him down here?
I asked Buddy, and the trailer shook in response. The sound of flesh being torn apart by a feral animal echoed from inside. Whatever was doing the shaking and growling stopped.
Meow Jew, get down here. We got a job.
He called out, prompting Alguacil to fly down with a speed I hadn't expected from a creature that large.
You learn something new every day.
We quickly gave Alguacil the rundown of everything we found out. The fact that I had managed to repair the earth mover caused him to look at me with shock. The griffin seemed to lose his cool for a second, only to regain it a moment later.
Ha! I found a way to get under your skin. Wait, was that a good thing?
Alguacil picked me up and shoved me onto his back, right against his neck feathers. I struggled at first.
Earth pony off ground, not happy.
But I fit like a proper rider. My forehoofs naturally wrapped over his neck and my rear hooves tucked into the cleft of his wings.
Wait, why had I let him... Oh, goddesses, flying now!
We were airborne and on the top of the trailer in less than 5 seconds. Looking at the skylight that was partway open, I dismounted from the griffin.
Something I never thought I would have to say.
A tiny pink pony jumped in excitement in the back of my head, shouting,
Do it again!
We can look in through the sunroof and hopefully find out just what we've gotten into.
Alguacil took me off his back while he talked. I took a moment to collect myself while he walked over the rest of the way to the skylight and a talon lifted the window fully open. I approached the skylight and immediately regretted it. I was so glad I hadn't had any solid food, as the smell alone would have murdered a manticore. I'd smelled the corpses from the room earlier, and those memories came flooding back into my mind.
Who were those ponies? Why had they been killed? And why was this similar yet somehow more rank?
The creature had the cold, dead eyes of a pony in a funeral casket. Only these were moving and still aware of their surroundings. Alguacil was talking to me, his voice coming from the long, dead pony's mouth as the vision faded.
Sunrise, looking through here. See that? That's a feral ghoul. These are things you'll have to learn to shoot at.
Alguacil's fatherly tone reminded me of a more jaded, larger version of my father. He took out his heavy revolver, and I took out my 20-gauge pump action. I peered over the edge of the skylight, poking the gun over the rim. Inside was the largest stallion I have ever seen. But this one was like Frida Waffles. This earth pony was rotting away, his flesh even falling off in some places. I had seen Big Mac in a parade once, and this stallion was certainly bigger than him.
What was this creature?
It snarled and bit into the couch, chewing it. I looked down and heard a few clicks from my pip-buck. Radiation was coming off this creature, all while it was trying to eat a couch that looked like it had been soiled by, well, everything. Flesh, feces, urine, and there were some stains that would make me blush to talk about. Bones of ponies were cast around the room without care, and if the intact skeleton lounging on the couch could have an expression, it would be one of horror and pain.
Calm down and end this creature's suffering, Sunrise. Make sure it can't hurt any more ponies.
Sunrise, you're gonna have to learn sooner rather than later. There are two kinds of ghouls, feral and non-feral.
Alguacil pointed to Waffles' trailer.
Waffles is friendly still and hasn't gone feral yet. They all turn eventually, but still try to learn the difference, all right?
He paused and pointed to the creature in the trailer under us.
And remember, if you ever go feral, would you want to be left that way?
Also, I realized the ghoul was actually chewing on the last bit of flesh from the long-dead unicorn.
Radiation did all this?
I shuddered, straining to keep my teeth under control as I wrapped my mouth around the trigger of the shotgun and took aim.
Okay, Sunrise, this creature is feral. It's killed other ponies, and it will kill you if given the chance. It's clearly not like you, or Waffles, anymore. It's like those Night of the Living Dead movies, right? Zombies.
Alguacil stabbed a claw down towards the ghoul as it walked away from the couch. He made sure my eyes were on it before continuing.
Put them out of their misery, okay? Make sure the non-feral ones have a good life, and when they start to turn, don't leave them that way if you can help it.
Alguacil talked like he had a deep personal experience with ghouls. He sounded like he was coldly laying out the facts, but something clearly troubled him. There was a break in his voice when he spoke that had a hidden pain behind it. Without uttering any further words, he raised his pistol, took aim. He ultimately shot the ghoul inside. The trailer shook, and soot and dust flung up around the skylight. Chunks of flesh ripped from the neck and shoulder of the ghoulified stallion. It roared to life and leapt up towards the skylight. Acting almost entirely out of reflex, I jumped back and slid into sets. Everything switched to slow motion as the launching creature got closer and closer.
Holy crap, it's fast! Even in sats, it's still moving almost like I would without the world slowed down.
I queued up one shot directly to its face. Its teeth gnashed hungrily. With a flash from my shotgun's muzzle, the world gradually sped back up. My weapon's roar deafened my hearing for a second. Huge chunks of stallion ghoul flesh sheared off its skull. The stallion's flesh was completely shredded off its face, exposing the bone underneath. Fragments of black ichor stained the floor, while shards of bone and shriveled ghoul muscle splattered the walls. I watched, caught in the moment, as the stallion flew back towards the floor. The recoil from the shotgun knocked me off balance. I felt Alguacil stopping me from falling into the skylight or off the trailer by grabbing my collar. I looked up in time to see Alguacil firing one more shot through the skylight. I heard the dull thump of a bullet meeting flesh, the vibration of something heavy falling over inside. Then, silence. Blinking through my visor, Alguacil turned away. I could see my shotgun end was covered in black goo, charred like ash around the barrel opening.
Was what ghouls bleed black ichor? How much radiation have they absorbed?
I slowly rose to my hoofs. More groaning reached my ears. Then I saw it on my eyes forward sparkle. 2 more red blips had appeared, both moving around under us.
Red meant bad things, right? I guess EFS could be used to help figure out if some pony wished to hurt me, right?
I regained my balance. Alguacil extended a talon to help me to my hooves as my tail took my shotgun back into the holster. We gathered at the door, which Buddy lined up and slammed into with the force of a wrecking ball. The flimsy trailer door didn't stand a chance and it flew off its hinges.
Friendly, loud reminder to not piss off the sand dog.
There was a hammering slam and a pulping noise as the door impacted into the corpse of the other ponies inside. I looked around and realized that Corners and Chifundo weren't anywhere near us. I looked at the EFS and 4 dots lined up in front of me, either inside or on the other side of the trailer. These 2 were marked by the tag spell from earlier. They had the names of the 2 ponies in question in tiny writing above them.
Right. TAG marks their signature, so long as I don't reset it and no one dispels it. So long as this thing works, it will recognize those 2's magical auras when they're in range.
I tapped Buddy on the hip to get his attention before he and Nyota stormed inside.
Okay, over there, 2.
My speech were abruptly interrupted by 2 shotguns blast and a pistol shot. One of the red blips on the EFS winked out instantly.
1! There's 1 more inside!
I corrected myself.
Did this happen often? Were we going to have to deal with pony zombies at every turn? Was this life now? I hope it gets better than this.
It has to, right, Sunrise? It can always be better.
Pink Pony in the back of my mind cartwheeled across my screen, cackling with untold glee. Buddy and Nyota stormed inside as a ghoul came out of a back room, running right at them. Both of them acted in unison. Nyota used his rear hooves to strike both the ghoul's legs, while Buddy brought down his claws like mighty hammers. The ghoul pony was turned into pulp in seconds. My nose wrinkled, and I recoiled in horror, as the smell was so much stronger here at the door. If there was anything solid in my stomach, I would have lost it. After a dry heave, I was fine, but any hunger I had from earlier evaporated.
Okay, Sunrise, just get through this. Go in and check the battery in this trailer. You might be able to use it. Go inside, get it over with. You have to. This was your idea. Sunrise, go!
By the time I had finished the thought, I was standing in front of the circuit breaker box.
Wait, had I walked in here subconsciously?
Oh, God, the smell! My eyes wandered over to the door, where I looked at the couch beside it. There was definitely a body under it. The body of the stallion we had blasted with shotguns and revolver rounds repeatedly. At least I couldn't see it. Buddy was moving the body of the other ghoul back to the room it came from. Nyota and Chifundo were searching the trailer for anything worth salvaging. I pulled the master switch and the trailer lights all died. After carefully removing its wires, I discovered that, this battery was heavy. I mean, this thing was like lifting a massive weight. It must be at least 70 pounds. My pip buck indicated it had a charge at 71%, which was good. That meant that the alternator of the earth mover could keep it powered. Suddenly I was in the air? None of my hooves touched the floor as I dangled above it, holding on to the power cell for dear life.
Ground, where did you go? Why was I?
Buddy looked at me with a smile as he leaned over to me.
I got it, little filly.
He assured me.
Can you put me down?
I asked, feeling strangely like I may have walked into a cartoon for a second. He lowered the battery until my rear hooves touched the trailer floor. Then he picked it up from my hooves with one paw like it was a toy.
How strong was he? I had to use my entire body to drag that battery across the ground. He could lift that and me with one paw. Note to self, do not ever make the sand dog mad. ×3 at this point.
We got back outside, and I happily left the feral ghouls' corpses behind. I felt a pang of guilt. We didn't do anything for the bodies, but at this point, I really wanted away from there. I hung my head while I approached Waffle's trailer. I hesitantly knocked a few times. There were some hoof steps as Waffle undid the barely held together lock and opened the door. Her raspy voice had a cheery hint in it.
Oh, it's you again,
A
Sunrise.
thought disturbed me. That there might come a day that I would have to kill Waffles if... No, Alguacil said when she goes feral. I realize now how much more precious life had to be, with a sword hovering over the back of your mind, ready to impale and end the pony you were, turning you into that creature that stallion had once been. I hadn't even taken the time to look at his cutie mark, if it was even still there.
Sunrise, she's staring at you. Speak now.
The pink pony insistently poked my head with my own tail.
Hi. So your neighbors apparently went feral. I'm sorry about that. They shouldn't bother you or any other pony anymore. I just hope it helps.
I looked away from Frida Waffles. Wells of shame slammed up from me, and I couldn't bear to see her face.
You can at least tell her the good news. It didn't count as murder if the pony inside them was already dead, does it?
I stayed looking away while letting her know the good news.
Also, we, don't need your battery anymore. You can keep it. We took the one from their trailer, and it's still good. I just hope it helps.
I sounded like a literal broken record, skipping, trying to form words to let her know her neighbors were dead. I looked back up. Certain Waffles would take the news very poorly. To my surprise, however, the mare seemed to have a genuine weight lifted from her shoulders. She stood taller, and her face shined into a smile.
She's happy we killed them?
Her facial features became lighter, and for the first time ever, I actually thought this ghoul was alive. Granted, a very starved and dehydrated unicorn, but alive all the same. Her eyes seemed to fill their hollowed sockets completely.
You did all that and don't want the battery anymore? I mean, I suspected that Big Hoss and his family had gone feral from the screams the other night. Oh, that poor unicorn. I could never have brought myself to put them out of their misery. Thank you, little filly. Hold on.
She exclaimed before trotting away from the door. In short order, the gold unicorn returned with 2 bags. She passed me one, and the pit bag registered 300 caps in it. I stared at the second little bag in my hoof for a moment. Then it registered a memory orb inside.
Caps? Like, why would I want caps? And I need a recollector for reading that. What kind of world is this?
I tucked the memory orb safely away into my backpack, ensuring it was cushioned so it would be protected.
Here, take these two,
she said, handing me a covered plate. It was warm to the touch and wrapped in tin foil. I held it up and smelled it. Cookies!
Well, thank you.
Was all I could manage as I handed Buddy the caps and a covered plate of cookies. He took them and gave me a toothy grin in return.
Well, that's great. We can pay to have Corner's leg fixed. Ooh, cookies!
He exclaimed, grabbing one and biting into it. He appeared to be lost for several seconds in that cookie, like the world was suddenly brighter. As he chewed, his eyes darted from side to side, and I swear his pupil had dilated as well.
Oh, boy. You gotta try these.
Buddy shoved the cookies under my nose, and I took another whiff. I took one into my hoof and examined it. Oatmeal raisin? I guess there is a chance that something nice survived after all. I took a bite, and suddenly everything got a lot darker around me. I felt strange, and my eyes went out of focus. I lost almost all my peripheral vision. The shadows of every object came to life and animated in a way that was terrifying and made me recoil away. The window behind me opened as Waffle put her forehooves and head out.
Now which cookies did I? Oh, have fun, dearie.
She shouted out, closing the window with a noise that sounded 10 times louder than it should have been. The world grew darker still, and more shadows moving in from all sides. The sunlight through the clouds got duller and more close to twilight through my narrowing vision. I could only see what was immediately in front, as my peripheral failed completely. My body felt foreign, like the connection to my brain was not working at full power. Rocks came to life and gnashed their teeth, intent on devouring me. The image of the pony skeletons in the water appeared, and they were moving. They stalked towards me, murderous intent of red eyes inside their skulls. The red eyes of the sentry bot.
Why did you say this?
Their bone-shattering voices filled my head. They kept shambling towards me, chanting it over and over again. A hoof grabbed me, and I turned to face Spring Bronco. His head was in pieces, yet he spoke perfectly. The gore dripping onto my stable barding was as he leaned in closer. The one eye still attached to his skull pressed into the visor, the same way the one in the cave had. He spoke with words that chilled me to my very soul.
Why couldn't you convince me to turn from my evil ways? Why couldn't I get a second or third chance? Why? Why, you stupid filly?
He shouted at me, his frayed mouth opened and lashed out around my throat. I screamed, and the world went black.
Level up. Extra SPECIAL. You might not be the next Alicorn princess, but at least now you're 10% more special. Don't let it go to your head, Snowflake. Attribute chosen, +1 strength.
But not from how far. Our journey's so ruthless, I still bear the scars. And what matters ain't that the world saw its end, but what kind of life we will spend.
I'm trying to be better, but still miss the mark. And each time I save you, I'm left in the dark. No,
when you're in trouble, I'll be by your side. My love for you ain't gonna hide.
blackened out sky, and all the dead trees are falling. Creatures we face will see equal judgment, our mercy or grace. Decision is needed for those who survive of whether you'll be left alive.
And all bloody work for a hope that we hold of past golden age and its story still told. And what sacred virtues we're able to heed to bring back to those who are in need.
The future